Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've caught your breath. I know that was exhilarating. Will you pipe down? I'm trying to be quite serious here. I think we'll move on, shall we?
Swiftly.
Rather swiftly, but let's not. Who is the best fullback in the Premier League?
Currently?
Yeah. I think it's quite easy. Trent Alexander-Arnold. Pretty easy. I think this one will be a quick one.
Pretty easy to get the answer wrong. Like, pretty easy because it's just such a bad answer. Pretty easy.
Absolutely.
For me. I'm going for Reece James. I think he's been outstanding this season. I think it was great last season. And, tends to actually get a game for England, like Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Well, I'll let you start, Aaron, properly with your opening statement. I hope you impress us both. You've got to claw this back somehow. Let's go.
So, over the 2 seasons, I'm joking, I won't rehash all the Van Dijk arguments. So, Trent Alexander-Arnold, the fullback position has changed a lot over the years. So I think we've had players in the past like Dani Alves, Marcelo, who always win like FIFA Teams of the Year. And yet people were like, oh, they weren't the best defensively. So, but Trent Alexander-Arnold, in terms of the history of the Premier League, he's currently second in the most amount of assists provided from the fullback position, and he's only 24. So I think he's only like 15 away from actually beating that record. And so that's a lot of what the modern fullback has to do. In terms of FPL, he's a lot more expensive, which also says a lot. And so with Alexander-Arnold, though, in terms of attacking threat, a lot more people are scared of him than Reece James.
How many goals has Alexander-Arnold got this season from the Premier League?
3, I think. 2.
Reece James has 4. Never mind. But he's got no attacking threat, apparently, Reece James.
Who did them goals come against?
Doesn't matter. Who's Trent Alexander-Arnold scored against?
Is Trent taking the corners and free kicks from those positions, or is that where James has scored the predominant amount of goals from?
James hasn't scored a free kick this season. Trent,
I mean, as in from deliveries from out wide, or...
No, James is just bombing on. He gets in the box, scores goals. I think he might have scored from a corner against Newcastle. But, in terms of Reece James, everything you've said about Trent is true for Reece James, obviously, except for the number of assists. He can't choose that he doesn't get a pass to Sadio Mane and Mo Salah.
But also, Reece James doesn't get a regular game for Chelsea.
Well, he does, and he has this season. Obviously, he's been injured, but in terms of him actually playing this season when he's fit, he's like first name on the team sheet. He's even been trying to shoehorn into centre midfield. Tuchel finds him that important to the team. Dropping club captain.
I think that had more to do.
I mean, who's Trent Alexander-Arnold got to challenge him at all? Nico Williams, or what a player! I mean,
don't disrespect.
He's never getting dropped in a million. In fact, I think he did get dropped at one point. He got dropped. And what I'm taking as sort of far currently was the calendar year for me of 2021. In Trent was getting dropped. Got dropped from international teams. At the end of last season, he wasn't very good. He was very bad. He was not a good footballer last season. He was getting slated. And one sort of thing that I'm sure, look, we can only pick one player each, but I think there'll be maybe some people watching that are going, didn't pick João Cancelo. And I think you're thinking the same thing as me with João Cancelo in terms of fantastic against weaker opposition, standard opposition, absolutely fantastic. Put him up against anyone with any real quality, and João Cancelo gets found out very, very quickly, like he did against Mo Salah in the 2-2 draw. Like we were absolutely hammering him for against PSG when he got dropped in that Champions League second leg semi-final. Trent's that kind of player. He did not have a good time in the European Super Cup against Chelsea a couple of years ago. He carried on that form last season. I don't think he was particularly great. Yeah, he got a few assists, whatever. Fantastic. Don't really care. He's a right back. But when you see him play against really good players, he's not very good. Whereas Reece James actually is. Like, you could put Reece James up against a Neymar and not really be that concerned. You put Trent in, you're very worried. You're like, maybe you shouldn't get up too far this time. In terms of his delivery, a couple of like stats. He's got the highest amount of forward attempted passes in the league, Trent. He's got 16 more, I think, per 90 than Reece James, and yet only successfully completes 3 more passes in a game, which shows that he's very much I've got the ball, I'm going to whip it in and see who it hits, and a lot of the time it doesn't pay off. Whereas Reece James, on the ball, is statistically far, far better than Trent Alexander-Arnold, both in progressive passes and keeping possession of the ball. Also defensively, in every metric other than interceptions, the only metric Trent is better at defending is interceptions. Everything else, tackling, pressing, and that is statistics I can, when we're not recording, get my phone and show you those statistics if you like. Well, in fact, what we'll do is, if you can edit them, I've got like a nice little side-by-side so they can see where they actually fall. We won't use that for now, because who needs facts when we've just got pure passion and sarcasm?
Can I ask, Aaron, so in terms of progressive passes, they're being classed as forward passes, do you feel that's as important as decisive passes between the two? Do you feel one is creating more chances?
Is like, you can't have that many forward passes because, like, it's who you're passing it to and the difficulty of the pass. Like, Salah, Firmino and Mane are not going to out-jump the ones who Chelsea have up front.
What are you talking about?
Plus,
Mane scores loads of headers. Like, he gets it. Mane's got a leap on him. Is that
because of the precision of the pass, or is that because?
I mean, look, I'm not saying Trent Alexander-Arnold can't pass a ball, but but it's
a lot of these forward passes.
It's nonsense to say. By the way, it's nonsense to say that Mane can't score a header it doesn't even have to score a header. A lot of the time,
what percentage of Liverpool's goals are Mane's headers?
It doesn't have to be a header. It's a cross. It's a progressive pass, so the ball can come in. How many times does Mane get in at the back post? Absolutely loads. Just like Robertson.
But that's more of a sideways pass. I'm on a forward pass.
No, but it's still a forward. It's a forward cross. It's a progressive pass. A progressive pass is defined by getting closer to the goal.
No, because
a pass in, providing it goes towards the goal. But when, let's say, I'm stood here at right midfield and I cross a ball in and it lands on a player's boot and not his head, it's still a progressive pass. Like Trent Alexander-Arnold plays them in. Also, he takes a lot of corners, so Van Dijk and Matip tend to get on the end of a few of them.
Yeah, so with the forward pass, though, a lot of what Chelsea's forward passing is like, you'll have the likes of Rudiger, you'll have all of their passing stats will be a lot higher than the average Premier League team, and that's because they'll pass to Jorginho and all he'll do is pass it back to them. So they're kind of like, here, Jorginho, and then Jorginho's like, I'm just going to pass to boost my figures, and then passes it back to the defender. The defenders are like, we're going to be heading that way, not here. So come on. And then
it's funny you should say that, because Reece James accepts 2 more progressive passes per 90 than Trent Alexander-Arnold. So that means that generally the picture you can paint is the ball gets played forward into Reece James for him to then do something with it. That's because he's really high. Bear in mind, you've got to think of comparatively to Trent, who plays very, very high and sometimes is an inside forward this season.
Yeah.
But what will happen is for Trent is the ball will get played forward, it then gets knocked back into him for him to take a touch and whip a ball in. So he gets a little bit more freedom, a little bit more time. He gets to put generally unchallenged crosses into a box, which he's very good at. I'm not saying he's rubbish at crossing or anything like that, but he does spam crosses.
Yeah.
And they're often unchallenged. Reece James gets the ball played to him more progressively, not just instead of him passing the ball, he's the one receiving it.
That's because of back three.
Reece James has so many more touches inside the box than Trent. So what you're saying, but what you said at the beginning is just to disprove that point where you said teams aren't scared of Reece James when he scored more goals and has more inside box touches than Trent Alexander-Arnold is absolute rubbish. I think they are. I think Trent is exceptional going forward. I think Reece James is exceptional going forward. But look, if you're going to give that little bit of a point, that little bit of an edge, you maybe get Trent, especially this season. You know what? This season, yes.
I would say it's more than just that.
Trent and no. Reece James's balls into the box are absolutely unbelievable. It's not his fault that it's Timo Werner getting on the end of it.
It's been Lukaku.
Yeah, and how bad is Lukaku been?
It's been Ziyech.
All these natural goal scorers, all these supernatural finishers. Like Trent's got some of the top goal scorers in the league. Mane finished joint top goal scorer the season before. Like Salah has got the all-time goal scoring record in a single Premier League season.
They wouldn't have been able to score as much if it wasn't for Trent's passes and the quality of passes.
Well, when you only got 40, he got 14 assists. It was his highest season, so he got 14 assists. So take away them 14 goals, and them two are banging in loads of goals. Firmino does a big job. Robertson does a big job. Whereas Reece James does his best. It's not his fault. He's got garbage in front of him. He's favoured by the England manager over Trent.
I would say that's a false because right before the Euros, Trent was in all the starting lineups, and then he got injured in that first friendly.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't playing. No, he wasn't. Gareth Southgate dropped him. He said he wasn't good enough. Yes, he was. Kyle Walker was right back and Kieran Trippier was left back.
He was playing. He got injured in training.
He was never ever starting for England. No, he wasn't. Kyle Walker is England's starting right back.
You could look back at it. You could look back at it.
Everyone can have a look back. Yeah, have a look. Have a look. Maybe he started two friendlies, but
and then got injured.
Check every Euros qualifier.
He started.
I want you to check every Euros qualifier. See, like in terms of the last 3 Euros qualifiers.
Oh, well, buckle up. This will be fantastic watching.
So you can... Well, I mean, you do that. We'll keep on chatting. People know... Kyle Walker was England's starting right back. And Reece James is the one that got the nod ahead of Trent. I know he got injured, but Reece James in those other games was getting the nod ahead of Trent because Twitter was going mental going, I can't believe you're not going to take Trent. Gary Lineker went, I can't believe you're not going to be taking Trent. Oh, because Twitter's the voice of knowledge, is it? So, yeah, like people want him for how well he can whip a ball and fantastic. He's maybe marginally better than Reece James, but they are both, statistically as well, well above average for any fullback in the world. But if you look at defensively, Trent isn't anywhere near Reece James. Like interceptions, neither of them clear a lot because they both tend to receive the ball. Just across the board. And Trent, I was shocked. Trent doesn't even press the ball. I couldn't believe it when I was looking because I thought, one thing Liverpool players do is press. All the other players press. That's why we get so many interceptions. Because we always wonder as well in the Champions League game, like how is Trent and Robbo getting all these ball recovery points? Spam ball recovery points. Bloody interceptions. Mm-hmm. Mental how many he gets. But other than that, everything else is Reece James, very heavy.
But that's also Chelsea they're a better defensive unit as a whole team. Reece James does his role very, very well.
But Reece James gets into their box more than Trent. So what I'm saying is, Reece James, because people say, Trent's always out of position. That's his excuse. Trent's out of position. Klopp wants him to play higher up the field. Reece James plays higher up the field than Trent Alexander-Arnold and gets back. And does a defensive
I feel
job.
like that's hidden because of the fact that Kante is there.
Kante is injured for the majority of the season.
But you've got
constantly
Kante,
injured.
You've got Kovacic, you've got you've got the two defensive sitting midfielders and a back three, so it's less noticeable when Trent Alexander-Arnold is forward. Because of when he started his career, everyone was like, he can't defend.
Liverpool have got Fabinho.
Yes, one centre-back and two...
Jordan Henderson.
But he plays on the right as well?
Yeah, Jordan... So Liverpool's entire system is Trent bombs on, Jordan Henderson fills in at right back. When Liverpool had a torrid times because Jordan Henderson was injured, because he fills in Trent's space. Chelsea players don't do that. They play as the central midfielders do. They're actually quite narrow. They tend not to go off. Jorginho doesn't really do much defensively. Obviously, he tries to pick the ball up. We know how I feel about Jorginho. Kante is everywhere, but no one fills in for Reece James at right back. Reece James fills in for Reece James at right back.
Right, so obviously the role of the fullback has changed hugely over the last 5-10 years, never mind going back to when the Prem started. But how much credence would you give to the importance of attacking versus defensive play? Like, what would you say is more important out of either player?
I think that's subjective. It depends on the team that you play for.
Chelsea's emphasis is definitely defending, and Liverpool's is we're going to outscore you.
Yeah. So this is a big thing. I think Reece James could play for Liverpool. I don't think Trent could play for Chelsea. I don't think you get the cover he gets at Chelsea, or that he gets at Liverpool for Chelsea. He's expected to get back. I don't think he does. Whereas Reece James does get up and down. Reece James is quicker than Trent. And again, the drop. Watch Reece James. His deliveries into the box are unbelievable. Some of the goals he scored in the Champions League as well this year. That goal he scored in the Champions League was absolutely fantastic.
He does deliver really good balls into the box, but they're not better than Trent Alexander-Arnold.
How about if their roles were reversed? Do you agree with what Dan said there? Do you think
I think
James
that goes down to
fit
the
better
coach, though,
or?
Thomas Tuchel, because you could see that with Marcus Alonso in terms of how attacking he is. I think that's just coming down to the coach. Jurgen Klopp would still see the attacking potential that Reece James has, but Jurgen Klopp doesn't place as much emphasis on defence because of how good Van Dijk was. So, and Alisson and stuff like that. So,
but that says it all. That says it all. That they put so much emphasis on. Not every team has Van Dijk. It's who is the better fullback. England don't have a Van Dijk. England have got Harry Maguire, John Stones at centre back,
but Gareth Southgate,
Mings, Dan Burn, right? So that's who we have as an England team, because they're the two teams that they're otherwise going to play for. So you don't have a Van Dijk to get you out of trouble. So they are both class going forward. Reece James is better at scoring than Trent Alexander-Arnold. He is better. Fact. It's an absolute fact. Trent gets more assists. Absolute fact. So they are both incredibly versatile at going forward, incredibly attacking. I think Trent has been excellent this season, was really poor at the end of last season, like really poor. And Reece James has obviously struggled a bit with injuries now. But you still have to do a job defensively. And there's a reason why he's not trusted at right back for certain teams. And there's a reason why Jurgen Klopp did actually take him out of the Liverpool team at one point, because he can be a bit of a defensive liability. I've seen it numerous occasions. He does get out of position. He doesn't have the pace to get back into position, unlike Reece James, who is one of the fittest players I've ever seen. And in answer to your question in terms of what's better, where's the focus on, attack or defence from a right back? Obviously, it depends if you're going to play 5 at the back. It's definitely more, you want to be better going forward. I still think 4 at the back, you need a very good balance. There's a reason why a lot of people think outside of a 3-month lull, Robertson's a better fullback than Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think speak to a lot of Liverpool fans thought that particularly last season, Robbo better than Trent, even though Robertson is actually quite akin to a Reece James, where the drop-off between Robertson and Trent going forward is marginal. I'd say Trent's definitely got the free kick goal scoring aspect. I mean, Trent's going to score way more goals than Robertson. But in terms of deliveries into the box, very similar. But Robertson's always been a more capable defender. Like I say, outside of like a 3-month lull. Reece James is that. Like, you need balance. I know that we want players to go bombing forward. But when it comes down to it, there is a reason why people like Pep Guardiola drop João Cancelo for the second leg of a Champions League game, despite how good he is going forward, because he's a mess defensively against good players. And if Pep Guardiola thinks that, then, maybe he's got a point.
I would think that Pep would choose Trent Alexander-Arnold over Reece James.
Why?
Because of
all those loads of crosses that Man City put into the box for no striker.
I mean, the dude De Bruyne does it like 50 times.
No, De Bruyne will pick it up, go off to the right, and by the way, De Bruyne is a better crossover ball than Trent anyway, so I don't know why they'd want that. De Bruyne is a better crossover ball than Trent.
Yeah, but then is Trent Alexander-Arnold better at crossover the ball than Kyle Walker? Yes. So
but Kyle Walker's job isn't to cross the ball. Kyle Walker's job is to overlap and get back into position. So Kyle Walker's runs,
which is what
he did
Trent
actually.
does.
To be fair, depending on the system that Guardiola plays, Walker obviously did the underlapping centre right back bit where he formed a central back 3-4 sort of weird formation for a little while, which Trent would be rubbish at, and you just wouldn't ever do that with Trent. But beyond that, he looks to use his pace to get the byline, maybe putting a cross from there, or he's obviously that constant threat, but it allows other players to do things. Kyle Walker doesn't really need to do much. In a back four, if you need someone to do Kyle Walker's job, it's going to be Reece James because he's faster than Trent. He's fitter than Trent. He gets up and down. And again, the ability to pass the ball into the box as a drop-off isn't that much. And Reece James has got an absolute thunder bastard on him as well. I know that Trent has scored a great goal against... Everyone seems to score great goals against Newcastle. It's like the thing to do. But again, that goal in the Champions League that Reece James scored was absolutely unbelievable how good that goal was, start to finish. I mean... some of the things, like he's just so more well-rounded than Trent. I personally think Trent's very one-note, class at crossing a ball, even though he spams them a lot and sometimes don't really.
So when I've looked at the stats between the two, though, Trent has more tackles per 90 and has more, obviously, interceptions, like you've said. And because a lot of teams are like, hey, we'll attack down this side, but Trent's adapted so much, and Trent is, I think the progression is a lot better.
He definitely doesn't have more tackles. He's got way more interceptions.
Trent's ceiling is better than Reece James's ceiling.
Can you cite your sources? Because we've got a bit of conflict there.
So mine's actually on my phone camera.
FPL.
FPL. Oh no, I've got an actual like scouting system thing on my phone
That you got off YouTube.
No, I didn't get it off YouTube. I can show you it, and like I say, we'll put it up as a graphic so that people can look at it and maybe see some things that they don't usually see. And what it does is as well, it gives...
and if I'm wrong, I'm going to edit this bit out.
Okay, spot on. And it also shows where they are on the percentile of players that play in a similar position. Because like I say, that's how I know in terms of the passing accuracy and stuff. Like I say, Trent's passing accuracy is not even close to Reece James. It's like 11%.
Because a pass to Jorginho is easier than a pass over the top to Jota.
Yeah, but Reece James plays just as many progressive. Reece James plays just as many progressive passes
to Jorginho.
But yeah, can I bring up my point that I made earlier? In that progressive passes, you're counting as towards the goal. They're not necessarily as risky as trying to find that killer ball to be finished. But how do you consider them comparable?
You can't say Trent Alexander-Arnold's pass over the top to Jota, where it shouldn't have been a penalty, but they got a penalty. You can't say that was worse than or a slight drop off to Reece James. That was like Beckham-esque.
Not even Beckham. Definitely not Stevie Gerrard. Reece James is I can't just pick something off the top of my head, but Reece James is putting some of the most unbelievable crosses I've seen in the Premier League.
Corner taken quickly.
Look, that was unbelievable.
That is a good point.
But that was also 4 years ago, something daft. Bayern Munich and Chelsea have won the Champions League since.
You're saying that 4 years ago.
I think it was 3 years ago.
But the question was, who's the best
fullback
currently?
Yeah.
So you've added the stipulation of this season.
Well, no, I was just taking present because in this very moment, Reece James is injured.
Most teams.
Chilwell's injured.
So I'll tell you my interpretation of the question.
Yeah.
It's the best over of any players that are currently still playing within the Premier League, the best from all of the time they've been playing, not necessarily this.
Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Can you point to? Are you able to point to?
Who's? Oh yeah, fair enough. but that's not how I've interpreted the question, because the thing is, right, with the question, I think why it's so juicy is that right now there are some fullbacks playing at the top of their game. João Cancelo's never been better. Trent, in my opinion, is playing the best he's played at Liverpool, including that Barcelona moment. I know it was a fantastic moment, but I still think he's playing the best football he's played. Reece James, I think, is the best right back in the world. Don't at me. Kyle Walker's still, fantastic fullback. Andy Robertson's came into his own over the last few. If we're talking about the best fullback right now, in terms of literally right now, it's Andy Robertson. like this very second, for best performance in the year of 2022, it's Andy Robertson, which none of us have picked.
So in which case, can you
we're both
please,
wrong.
can you please not reject my premise that I'm taking into account all of their current years of any.
But then it's like,
player.
I mean, we could have opened it up to like Cesar Azpilicueta. Like there are other, like I would have picked Andy Robertson. If it was who was the best current fullback that has also had the best longevity. It's probably Kyle Walker versus Andy Robertson. They're probably the answers.
But they're not playing as good as
Trent. But
Robertson
I
is
just
playing
ask,
better than Trent now. Robertson
Aaron,
is unbelievable.
would you back away from Trent so easily? Because Dan seems to be giving up on
Well,
James
no, because
just the drop of a hat.
I'm picking Reece James for this year. He's obviously picked up the Champions League. It's absolutely phenomenal. Don't know what Trent's won this year, but I mean, currently, because that's the question. Currently, Reece James is the current Champions League holder.
I'll read the question.
He's got.
It doesn't say currently.
Crap. Wish the question did have currently in it.
I think you're lying.
I mean, as you've typed it out, I'm not gonna.
You've misled the house.
Did have currently in it. Yeah, so he's the Champions. He's got a Champions League medal at the minute. But yeah, in terms of the start of this season, he's been absolutely class. And whenever he's not played, Chelsea have looked so much worse. He's not in the squad at the minute because he's injured. And look what's happened to them. Look at what's happened to Chelsea since he's not been playing. They've drawn 8,000 games.
He wasn't playing at the start of the year when they were.
He was playing at the start of the year. Missed
I had him in FPL and he wasn't.
Well, no, he was. He got sent off against Liverpool for the handball, and then he got banned, which is why he didn't play. But yeah, I don't think he played the first game of the season, and then from them because he scored 2 goals against Arsenal. How good are their defence this year? Arsenal had a fantastic defence. Banged in 2 goals.
Not back then though.
What do you mean back then?
Not Arsenal have been very up and down throughout the year.
Can I ask one more question before I ask you to summarise? So we've touched upon it briefly in terms of the role that they're given, so attacking presence versus defensive capabilities. Obviously, your whole argument, Dan, seems to be, in terms of defensively at least, that James is the stronger of the players. But those stats, if we can find them and put them up on the screen, might throw that into disrepute. However, do you feel as if it's better, it should be counted as the most rounded fullback, or how well they fit into the current system that they're playing and are utilised?
No, it's who's the best fullback? I mean, that is actually the question then. Who is the best fullback? So that is an individual thing. And yeah, they're both utilised well in the team. But Reece James, I think, would fit into more teams than Trent. In terms of having Virgil van Dijk as a comfort blanket and Jordan Henderson as a comfort blanket, dropping into the right side there, which he has done. I think that you want a well-rounded fullback, and I suppose to summarise, the drop. I disagree anyway that Reece James is loads worse than Trent going forward. I think they are both the 2 best attacking right-sided fullbacks in the world. I suppose you could put João Cancelo in that. There's the 3 of them together in a league of their own, in terms of that right side. And it's so close. People have their own preference. Oh, I think this one's better. I think that one's better. Whatever. They are so close. Defensively, it's not close. And there is a reason why I think someone like Gareth Southgate trusts Reece James ahead of Trent. But when you look at those stats and when you even just watch them play, Reece James's debut, he kept an informed Wilfried Zaha in his back pocket, who usually is all right on that side. He was absolutely class against them. Whereas, Trent struggles against good players. He really does struggle. Reece James doesn't struggle. So when you're as good as Liverpool and Chelsea, particularly Liverpool, and that's why I brought João Cancelo into this before. It's really easy when you're playing in a good team and you're a great player to absolutely batter 9 out of 10 teams that you play. But how do you play when you've got to come up against someone world class? And I think Reece James has had better defensive performances as a defender than Trent Alexander-Arnold has. And look, that game against Barcelona, fair enough, 3 years ago, and it was amazing, and that's one thing. I mean, does that mean that Jimmy Traoré is Liverpool's best right back ever because he stopped that goal going in on the line in 2005 Champions League final when he's categorically maybe the worst defender I've ever seen? Like, yeah, he was unbelievable game, but against like world-class teams, like Aaron, we were literally slating him for that game against Real Madrid. Remember that game where we both went onto a camera and absolutely battered Trent? But we battered him because he was shit. He was actual dog shit. And then Reece James rocks up. Chelsea go through against Real Madrid. Both playing against the same team. Vinicius Jr. had Trent Alexander-Arnold on toast. He's a good player, not world class. Like, when you put him up against someone with a bit of pace, a bit of trickery, something decent, Trent
I am
turns
just going to point out that that's going to be struck from the record because you can't bring up someone's previous comments when this is a standalone argument. So I'd like to say, although he's bashed Trent in the past, I would like...
Excuse me? It's not that kind of podcast, guys.
It's a little bit.
Trent, would you like to come on? I promise you I'll say sorry. You're the best.
Dan pointed out a couple of occasions where Trent has fallen short against the big teams. Can you think of any occasions the other way on that you could bring to light?
He's performed well against the big teams.
Where he performed poorly. So I mean, I'm talking about James now. Can you think of where he's let Chelsea down due to one of his performances?
So because he's obviously, you've mentioned multiple times, sent off.
Multiple times. Got sent off once because the ball hit his thigh and bounced up onto his arm.
Yeah,
so.
that's absolutely shocking.
And today's game. And didn't he get the assist? He got the assist in that. It was a 1-1 draw and Reece James got the assist. And then the ball bounced off his thigh and hit his arm. Okay,
then he let his team down with that red card.
So they've got a draw.
That is damning.
If he wasn't on the pitch, they probably wouldn't. If anything, they played better down to 10 men. When they just dropped everyone in the box.
Is this what you're trying to claim now?
You can't argue for them, right? No, but they just put everyone in the box. All right, then
they played better with 10 men than they did when Reece James was on the field.
Just put everyone in the box. Actually, I think I'm so bollocks there. Anyway, I'm sure Liverpool battered them in that second half. I just remember the game. I'm sure they absolutely battered them in the second half.
Yeah, Trent Alexander-Arnold did really, really well.
Yeah, did really well against 10 men. Didn't get a single assist. Didn't do anything. 10 men against Chelsea, didn't do anything. Whereas Reece James got an assist.
Because Chelsea were playing a formation of 8-1-1.
And yet he was still up and down, got an assist. Unbelievable stuff. And then, the ball hit his thigh and bounced upon his arm.
I did ask for your summary, and I feel as if this has probably doubled the length of this question.
Well,
so can I ask you now, Aaron, how you feel, and if you could surmise?
I think one of the most reliable source of how the football community feels is Fantasy Premier League. So, in terms of how many people have Trent Alexander-Arnold in their team, I think it's like 48% right now. About to go up because there's a double game week. So obviously people would rather triple captain Trent Alexander-Arnold than Reece James.
He's got someone to pass to. He passes to Mane and Salah and Jota. Reece James passes to Timo Werner and Lukaku and Havertz
and Jorginho, which skews the stats.
Exactly that.
And but Trent Alexander-Arnold is priced at 8.5 for a reason, because he's the best right back in there.
Yeah, I mean, He also, Trent is into rotation risk with Cesar Azpilicueta
because he's better.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's not because Azpilicueta is the club captain or anything. And if anything, he sent Azpilicueta packing. It's like, no.
I think we need a word count.
We do. I mean, you've gone well over. I haven't even said it yet, but I can tell you it's well over. Let's put a pin in it there. I'll get back to you in just a moment.
Don't think I need.
Well, wasn't that gripping? I can safely say the last 15, 20 minutes have been possibly up there as the best in my life. Not going to lie. But again, after another close round, points have been docked. The chin buckle muggle needs to pipe down. But I didn't like the way that you threw away the cause and stopped backing James when other fullbacks were thrown into the mix. I mean, there's bullshit and then there's proper bullshit, and I'm a big fan. Fantasy Football League. Yeah, I mean, you're always going to win an argument with that, clearly. But 1-1!